This is day 4 of the October 88 7-day retreat. Some people have brought up question about tension and pain in the shoulders, maybe neck, maybe back, but in this case it was shoulders. Sitting without moving for a length of time, the body can get tense just from that sitting without moving. And I don't know how those particular people who brought it up sit with their hands. Sometimes people hold their hands like this without any support. If one wants to hold the hands together like this, it's very helpful to put a cushion, maybe a husk cushion, into the lap and adjust it in height and position so that the hands rest relaxed and the shoulders and shoulder blades are also relaxed, that those muscles don't have to hold up the weight of the arms and hands. Also, it's possible to give attention to what's happening in the shoulders and neck, because the shoulders particularly hold a lot of I must, I should kind of tension. Not just the shoulders, but is often particularly manifested there. So in listening, as it were, or attending to what is going on in the shoulders, not I must have a relaxed posture, but what is going on there? One may find a pulling together or pulling up of the shoulders, which is just going on. And in being aware of it, it can relax. It doesn't have to continue going on. It can release in this awareness. It may not. It's not often that simple, but it can. So can one give gentle attention? I'm saying gentle, not forceful or intentional, but just attention to where the tensions are. Sort of looking, feeling, listening around there. Sometimes it's enough to let go of a holding pattern. The body too holds memories, just like the brain does. The face can hold tension. There can be tensions around the mouth or nose or forehead. Who knows how it started, but there they are. And if there's some awareness, it may not have to continue. May have followed a thought, a feeling, an emotion of anger or worry, or raised eyebrows, and then the body holds it, even though the feeling and emotion may have passed. So can there be awareness of how we sit, move, hold the body, not with an intention to change it or correct it, but with an interest in finding out what is there. And whether it is, when it is tension producing or pain producing, whether it has to go on. Whether one can sit in a different posture, experiment with that. Yet some pain just stays there, it doesn't go away by just noticing it. So then, if it's the middle of a round or the beginning of a round, can one just be with that undividedly, without opposing it or resisting it, and without knowing it? Not calling that pain or ache or whatever one's habitual label may be for that state. Also not remembering it from the past. We do that by saying, oh, this is my old pain, I know it's going to get worse during this round, I hope I'll make it to the bell. These kind of reactions. Fixate. Or make something into something that it may not be. So what is it? If I don't label it, don't know it from before, it may be something different. But just attend, listen, feel. Without any opposition. Not saying it's good for me or it's bad for me, to hold all of these comments in abeyance when they come up, to be done with them. Not trust them to convey valuable information that one has to act on. So that layer by layer, the separation, the resistances, and fighting it or denying it, rationalizing it, wallowing it, all of that being seen drops off. It's not necessary. It's not that thing itself. What is that thing itself? The directness of it. When I don't know it, at this point, this pain may cease to be a problem. It may change, it may go away, but one may find out it is not what one thought it is. People ask about whether the awareness, the observation that goes on, whether that has to be self-conscious, or else, say, whenever there is this observation, there is such an element of self-consciousness in it. What is that? Can we look at it? Right now, in listening, there is a hum. It's plainly and simply audible. But our perceptions don't proceed that simply. There's the hearing of the sound, And it is immediately interpreted by the brain as being whatever, hum of an airplane or helicopter. A reaction to it. But then there's also the statement that comes up, I hear that plane. I'm hearing it. And particularly with that statement, with the reactions too, but particularly with that statement, I hear that or I see that. With that comes the fresh affirmation that there is an I that's hearing that. In looking right now, looking from here, from this mat, a certain people, the door, the view, the floor, that I see. And anyone else sitting, wherever they're sitting, sees something else. There's a different retina image on all the different retinas in this room. No two are alike. And if we want to refer to the fact that the retina image here on this spot is different from over there on that spot, we say, I'm seeing this and you are seeing that. If we changed mats, we could say, you're seeing what I saw before, now I'm seeing what you saw before. In this case, the I and you is used to describe something, where the vision takes place. That there is different vision or different fields of vision on different spaces is not no argument. It is so. The colors seen may be different for each retina. But with the statement, I see that, usually go other statements and feelings. I see it well, or I can't see it so well. Somebody else can see better. Yesterday I could see much clearer. There come comparisons, evaluations about oneself. Which reinforces and reaffirms this feeling of there being an entity other than what is actually taking place. The retina image we don't argue about. It's a fact. But the feeling of me being good at it, being poor at it, that I should do better, or all these judgments and evaluations about ourselves make for this feeling of self. And then one notices that the observation is sort of foggy. It is not clear. It is self-conscious. Because the statements about oneself, the evaluations, become much heavier. They gain in importance as they accumulate. And what is seen may not even be noticed. The focus is now on the evaluation or judgment, reflection about oneself. We talked about it yesterday or the day before in walking around, wondering, will somebody see me? How do I look to others? I'm attentive or I can't be attentive. Almost constant thinking about oneself, which is thinking about the thoughts of oneself. The ideas about oneself. the statements one has made about oneself and thinking about those, concluding from those, and so it goes on. And then wondering, can I ever walk unself-consciously, naturally, without this burden of self-consciousness? That's the word for it. And it is felt as a burden because it is not only a mental movement, but every mental movement is accompanied by physical responses. And since our mental movements are in contradiction, I want it, but I also don't want it. I should, but I also shouldn't. These contradictions in our mental movements, thoughts, cause conflicting feelings and emotions throughout the organism. And then faced with the feeling of these conflicting emotions and feelings, we don't like that. We make statements about it. Say, I don't like this, I want to be rid of it. So there's a new conflict with how one feels at this moment due to previous conflicts. So the body constantly put upon through our thoughts to respond in a certain way, and these physical responses constantly generating new thoughts about oneself, how one feels, how one should feel and doesn't like to feel, and maybe can change it, and so forth. Is that what we call the movement of self-consciousness? And then the yearning to be free of that, to walk freely, look and listen without this burden of self-consciousness. When the mind doesn't move in thoughts about itself, then there is free movement, a feeling of release. When the mind does not constantly generate thoughts about itself and what it should and shouldn't do, be like or not be like, look to others or not look to others, how one is approved or impresses others. When all of that is quiet because it's understood and seen, as it comes up, it is not continued. Because one sees what it is, what kind of a movement it is, and how it affects everything. It doesn't have to go on when it's seen as it starts. Then the motions of the body in walking or looking and listening are freer. As though a big burden had been put down. It brings to mind a play many, many years ago I saw on television. It was incredibly impressive. It was by Waiting for Godot. I don't know who wrote it. Beckett. Maybe many of you have seen it. The main characters are two clowns, very bored with themselves, not knowing what to do, and I think taking some shoes off with great effort, which are too tight, and then feeling better and laughing, and they say, "We laughed. What do we do now?" And then comes this strange assemblage of two people, one very sensuous-looking character. I think he's gnawing on a chicken drumstick, holding a string, and that string is tied around a man in a formal attire, sort of curls like Einstein, and he holds two heavy bags, which you can tell, he's a very skinny character. He must be tremendously pulling on his shoulders. And the two clowns sort of approach him curiously and say, why don't you put those bags down? And he just talks like that. Just spews out stuff and keeps holding those bags. They ask him several times and the same response. Why did I bring that up? I forgot the connection. I'm going to make a point with it. It's a good point anyways. Why don't we put the bags down? It seems so simple there, but he doesn't do it. He just talks and talks and talks. Formulae and language, all kinds of stuff coming out. One person told me this morning, walking down the hill early, she saw two little fawns in the meadow, and as the fawns saw her or heard her or got wind of her, they sort of walked away. And as she was coming back up the hill, she saw them again, near their mother. And this time they didn't hear her. So she got close, she went through these thorn bushes there and just watched. And they were nibbling grass. And then someone came down the hill, and immediately they looked up, and as the person went down the hill, all 6 eyes sort of moved that way. And as the person was out of earshot or whatever are their cues, they went down to nibbling the food again. As the person came back up, they looked up, and the eyes moved with that person, and then back to eating. The way she put it was such a joy to see the uncomplicatedness of it. As the person was gone, there didn't seem to be any lingering of anything. And yet, attentive to the situation at the moment. And if there was no cue for imminent danger, then going back to the eating. And nothing extra. Something scary has happened to us, we can think about it for years. The brain records it, and if it's unfinished business, it will keep bringing it up through memory. And while that memory is running, if there's no awareness of it, it's like as though the real danger was there. It's so real what memory can do, because it triggers the same physical responses that were there when the original thing happened. We know that from dreams. In a dream, one rarely realizes that one is dreaming. What is going on is real. It seems real only upon waking up. Does one realize how immensely realistic these dreams are, as though it was a real thing happening, real people, real hurts, real fears, meaning the organism responding to pictures. Memories. So, does the mind make an image, an idea out of a state of unself-conscious walking or sitting or being. There's the statement of a man in ancient China who, upon coming upon this state, exclaimed, "Marvelous, superhuman, miraculous activity, carrying water, chopping wood." Does the mind now make a goal out of this, an idea, and want that? And then it is in conflict again with the process that's going on, the self-consciousness, the statements about oneself. Or will one look at that and observe it, see it, understand it as it happens now, not conflicting or splitting oneself into what's actually happening, ignoring that and thinking of a state, a desired state of release from this burden. That's what the mind does, and that's why it's constantly in conflict, and the body responding to that. So in sitting, and when the awareness dawns that there's this self-conscious sitting, being aware of being aware, as one person put it. What is that? And to begin watching, like watching the deer. One thought, and another feeling, and another thought. All about me and myself, not condemning it. If that condemnation has come up, there's another thought to be seen, and how it affects the organism. And then the thought, I shouldn't condemn, she talks about that. And then another thought. So that there's a free observation of this whole process of consciousness, becoming aware of itself, as it were. And with that awareness there comes an intelligence about it. When the thought does not occur, oh, I'm aware, how great, or whatever, then there is no self-consciousness. There's just whatever's going on. The awareness of it. But like everything else we talk about, one has to see this for oneself as it happens. And no one can do it for one, and that's the beauty of it. It happens on its own. One person brought up the question whether in doing what I'm doing I have faith. Do I believe in something? And the added question or wondering whether doesn't one need faith? To get one through these dangerous, critical, violent times, doesn't one need faith? Personally, I have no faith. had faith when I was young. I had a little picture book Bible, and these pictures impressed themselves so deeply on my memory that I can still see some of them. Also, we had a songbook, an illustrated songbook, German children's songs, and I love these pictures. Pictures always impress themselves deeply upon my mind. And one song was about an angel that goes throughout the land, protecting every child. And there was the picture of a child that was lost someplace on a meadow near a forest, and the luminous figure of an angel with large wings sort of embracing that sleeping child. A child was sleeping, and there was sort of this glow of gold all over this child, and I loved this picture. And wondered, I wasn't quite sure, I wasn't quite certain, but wondered whether there was such an angel looking out for me. Hoping at least there would. And I also prayed every night that our house wouldn't burn down. I had seen a fire once far away because our parents would never take us to scenes of accidents or disaster. They would try to keep us away, but you could see it through the window. It was a tall building, and the bright flames and the black smoke were also impressed themselves deeply. And from then on, I prayed every night that the house shouldn't burn down, and that my mother, father, and our maids would not die, should not die. And then, becoming more and more aware or cognizant of what was going on, the persecutions, threat of war, parents with their friends whispering away from us. That I remember one time overhearing that sentence, "The guns are going to go off." It was frightening to me. And again wondering whether this benevolent God that I had seen pictures of in the little Bible book, although I had ambivalent feelings toward him, was also an angry God. I was afraid of him too, because he threw Adam and Eve out of the paradise. Whether this God would look after us. I don't know with what particular happening, but with the bombs and the taking away of the Jews and the going away of the young men, and one after the other, Shah not coming back. With all of that, this faith totally shattered. What was happening made no sense at all. And if there was a loving God, where was he? It seemed to be something didn't seem to make sense at all. And in the place of faith came wondering what the meaning of all this absurdity was, if there was any. And that question was very compelling. It didn't leave me. It didn't leave me when we later moved to Switzerland, into what was a paradise. If you came out of Germany into Switzerland, you can't believe the difference. First thing we saw as we crossed the border, and we didn't cross it quite legally because we were off the American zone. American zone didn't border on Switzerland, so we had to become residents of the French zone for a while, and then just get a daily permit to visit Switzerland, after which we didn't return. And the first thing that my sister and I were sitting at the side of a road, we had gotten out of the train, my parents and our brother came in an old car. We were to meet there on the other side of the border. We saw some pieces of bread lying in the street, and we knew we weren't in Germany anymore. So, even there in these so different surroundings with such beauty and wealth and everything was available, the question of what the meaning of life is and a sort of ongoing depression with it, yet not enough depression to give up the wondering about it, that continued and got me. The only thing I knew to do was to read books and try to write out some sort of philosophical things about the meaning of life, which never quite came together. And then coming to this country, doing studies at the university, always trying to find out. This question was sort of the generator of the interest in the studies. Could one find out what the meaning of life was? Why do we act the way we do? Why do we behave in the way we do, which causes such incredible misery and sorrow? But in finding things out, I was always interested in whatever was presented in courses. There was always something interesting, and also not just to learn something, but with learning something, often one could discard some false notions one had held. And yet then one began to hold on to the right notions and possess those. But yet there was never a complete holding on. Things, new books read, I left the school, it wasn't satisfying enough. And began reading on my own again, a lot of psychology books that were not presented in school. Trying to find out, and finally coming into this whole thing of Zen Buddhist meditation. And in all of that, looking, wondering, reading, and in reading, trying to see already at that time, is this really so? Can I verify this myself? In all of that, there was no room for belief anymore. That was gone. It hadn't served. It hadn't been effective. It didn't shed light. I remember hearing my mother say many times, I envy those people who have these strong beliefs, because they seem to have less fear, be more supported by it. But she didn't. She didn't have belief. And was agonized most of the time. So, is that an answer? Do I have a belief? I'm wondering whether we need it, or whether it isn't a hindrance, sort of a smoke screen, an evasion of looking for oneself, finding out. Whatever one needs to find out. What is the truth? What is reality? What does life mean? What does life and death mean? Why are we born? Why do we have to die? And not be satisfied with stories about that. If one is satisfied, then it's not a problem. then one goes on with a belief. I'm not telling people what they should have or not have. In connection with that, I wonder whether we have enough time. Came another question from a different person. Person saying, I realize that everything I do is secondhand. I really feel I'm a clone of others. I've always trusted what other people told me to do, and I did it. Now I'm beginning to wonder, what am I myself? And then the question, don't I have to have trust in myself? There's a lot of talk about it and recommendation to develop trust in oneself. But what is myself? What am I to trust about myself? Superficially, one can build up positive images about oneself and then trust that these images will work. But we're not talking about that here. Although, if that is what's going on, can it reveal itself? One says, I'm very confident in myself. What is it that one is confident in or has trust in? In the past? And trust that what was in the past will continue into the future. In the case of that person, it was, I don't know what I really am. Shouldn't I have trust in myself? These are two different processes, aren't they? To find out who one is or to have trust in oneself. Trust presupposes that one knows what one is. And then to trust that. Which means what? What does it mean? One can so quickly be satisfied with a sentence, can't one, with an expression. To trust myself, does it mean that what will happen to me will be predictable, will be good, will be all right? The same as was, or what I would like to happen, I trust that this will happen. What is predictable about ourselves? That there will be something permanent, unchanging about ourselves. That's what we wish was so. We would like that, but in observing oneself, what is there that is permanent, predictable and unchanging? What one observes is thought, feeling, emotion, sensations, often running totally, automatically, mechanically, most of the time, in contradiction with each other. We talked about this at the beginning of this hour. What about that is to be trusted? One person said, "I've always followed the authority of others. I don't want to go on with that. I'm going to trust myself." Or, I don't know what word was used. But is one following the authority within oneself? There's a lot of authority in oneself. The authority of one's past experiences, of one's ideas and opinions, convictions, images, ideals. It's no different from outer authority, is it? So here, for the time being, will one find out what one is before one trusts something? Find out what this sense of self is all about? How it operates, how it is put together? And how will one look, observe? Self-consciously, with the constant concern about how one is doing. Am I doing well? Am I making progress? Doing as well as someone else? Or observe that and let go of that, so that the viewing is clear, at least at times, for moments at a time. When this whole self-structure, mentally, physically, organismically, is exposed and understood, seen, as it happens from moment to moment, it loses its power at that moment of seeing it, at that moment of insight, or awareness. And when it is not in control, this whole self-structure, mentally, physically, emotionally, when that's not in control, when it is in abeyance, as it were, then the seeing directly and the action, the seeing is already the action, and whatever action flows from that, that's the only thing that can be trusted. But at such a time or moment, there's no one that needs to trust. There's no one there. There's only what is there. So this whole duality of me trusting in someone or myself is not functioning. This is for each one of us to come upon by ourselves. The words by ourselves aren't very good, are they? All it wants to convey is no one can do it for one. And yet, talking about it, being concerned about it, looking at it, conversing about it, looking together in it, that may all help. That may all be of help. One has to see. We will end here for today.